Imagine, for just a second, that there is this physical door inside your mind,
Okay.
and this door, it doesn't stay open all the time. In fact, it only unlocks and swings open once every 24 hours.
Right.
And when it does, it stays open for exactly 4 minutes. And the crazy thing is, most people don't even know it's there.
Oh, they walk right past it.
Exactly. They walk right past it every single night, just completely oblivious. But if you know it's there, and if you know how to intentionally walk through it during those specific 4 minutes, I mean, it literally has the power to completely reprogram your reality.
It's a profound image, for sure. But I think it's important to note that we are talking about a very real, very measurable window of human consciousness here.
Yeah.
The biology of it is, well, it's undeniable.
And that is really the absolute core of our mission for today's deep dive. We are pulling from this incredible stack of sources today.
Yeah, we've got some great material.
We really do. We're looking at Carl Jung's foundational depth psychology texts, some modern neurological sleep studies, and even dipping a bit into the history of alchemical philosophy.
Which sounds intense, but it all connects perfectly.
It totally does.
Yeah.
Because we want to figure out exactly what happens in the brain as you fall asleep. Our goal today is to decode a really practical, actionable framework from all of Carl's work. We want to teach you how to use his theory of this 4-minute window to actually improve your days.
Yes.
To see your real desires come through, and I think most importantly, connect with who you truly are beneath all the noise.
I do think, though, that we need to draw a very hard line in the sand right now just regarding what this process actually is and, what it definitely is not.
Yeah, let's do that right out of the gate, because I want to be incredibly clear with you listening right now. This is not about that superficial hustle culture stuff.
Thank goodness.
Right. We are not going to sit here and tell you to wake up at 4:30 in the morning, jump in an ice bath, scream affirmations at your bathroom mirror, and try to, forcefully bend the universe to give you a sports car.
Right. Yeah. That aggressive approach is, it's essentially trying to shout over the unconscious mind using the extremely limited vocabulary of the conscious ego.
And it's exhausting.
It is, and it almost never works long term. What we're really exploring today is how to speak the actual native language of the unconscious.
Yeah.
We're going to guide you through the biological and, frankly, the mystical mechanics of what is clinically known as the hypnagogic state.
The hypnagogic state, yeah.
Exactly. We'll look at Jung's concept of psychic reality, the absolute necessity of shadow integration, and really just how to finally stop fighting yourself.
Because to understand how to fulfill a desire, any desire at all, whether that's financial peace, a healed relationship, or just wanting a quiet mind for once.
Which is huge.
Yeah. We first have to look at the actual machinery of the brain right as it is powering down for the night.
So let's look at that machinery. Scientifically, we're talking about that very specific transition state between wakefulness and sleep. During your waking hours, like right now as you listen to this, your brain is operating in beta waves.
Beta waves, okay.
Yeah, beta. And these are fast, high-frequency, highly analytical waves. They are heavily survival-oriented.
So like stress mode, basically.
Pretty much. Beta is the state of navigating rush hour traffic, answering demanding emails, paying bills, scanning your environment for immediate threats or problems.
It's just a state of constant friction. I kind of think of the brain in this state as acting like an air traffic controller who's dealing with 100 planes at once.
That is a perfect way to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
But as you lie in bed, in those final 4 minutes before you lose waking consciousness, the electrical activity in your brain undergoes this massive shift.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it transitions from those frantic beta waves down into slower alpha waves, and then finally into deeply relaxed theta frequencies. And as this electrical shift happens, something profound occurs psychologically. The ego's defenses just begin to dissolve.
I love thinking about this through a metaphor. Think of your waking analytical ego as a really strict nightclub bouncer, or like a rigid IT administrator for your brain's network.
Okay, I like that.
Right. So during a day, you walk up to the IT admin and you say, hey, I am going to be financially free and I am deeply at peace.
And the admin just laughs at you.
Exactly. The IT admin looks at your current bank account, looks at your elevated cortisol levels, and says, no, you're not. That software is unverified, access denied.
Yeah.
The admin basically rejects unrealistic ideas to keep the system grounded in perceived reality.
Because its job is to protect the status quo.
Yeah.
The ego's job isn't to make you happy, Its job is to keep you alive based on past data.
Right. But in those 4 minutes of theta waves, the IT admin literally logs off for the night. You suddenly have root access to the mainframe. The door to the unconscious is completely unguarded. And this brings us to one of the most, I think, haunting realizations from Carl Jung that was highlighted in our sources. He observed that the last words a soul speaks to itself before sleep are written on the floor of the unconscious as if carved in stone.
Carved in stone. Notice he doesn't say written in pencil on a whiteboard.
Right. You can't just erase it.
No. Stone implies foundational programming. It implies a permanence that will dictate the entire architecture of your following day.
And this is where it gets really tragic, I think. Because if you have root access to your brain's mainframe in those 4 minutes, what are most people actually doing with it?
Oh, they're programming themselves entirely by accident.
Exactly. They spend those crucial 4 minutes downloading this malware loop of the absolute worst 7 seconds of their day.
Yes, playing the greatest hits of their anxiety.
Yeah. They replay an argument they had at the office, they fixate on an unpaid bill, or they obsess over a weird look someone gave them in the hallway.
Or, and this is so common now, they are lying in the dark, scrolling on their phones. They are literally mainlining other people's curated anxieties and global catastrophes right up until their eyes flutter shut.
Which is terrifying when you think about it.
It is, because the IT admin is offline. The unconscious mind has no firewall at that point. It accepts whatever images and feelings are present in that 4-minute window as the desired blueprint for tomorrow.
Oh, wow.
So if you fall asleep looping anxiety, the unconscious assumes, okay, this is the reality we are instructing the nervous system to construct. More anxiety, please.
Now, I want to pause here and challenge something that came up in the sources, because this is usually where a lot of people check out. The sources draw this parallel between this 4-minute window and quantum physics.
Right, the double slit experiment stuff.
Yeah, exactly. They talk about how the physical reality we perceive is less than 1% of the electromagnetic spectrum, and how observation collapses the wave of infinite possibilities into a fixed reality.
Okay, yeah.
And I'm just struggling with this leap. Like, are we actually saying that if I just observe myself having a Ferrari in those 4 minutes, quantum physics magically drops it in my driveway? Because that sounds like, magical thinking. How does a subatomic physics experiment actually map to human psychology?
It's such a vital question. And we really have to strip the quantum woo away to see the actual mechanism at play here. So, no, a physical car does not materialize out of thin air.
Good to know.
Right. When Jung and modern depth psychologists reference quantum observation, they're talking about the psychological mechanism of perception.
Okay, perception.
Think about it. Your brain is bombarded by billions of bits of sensory data every single second. To prevent you from literally going insane, you have a network of neurons in your brainstem called the reticular activating system, or RAS, and it filters out about 99% of that data.
So it only lets in what it deems important.
Exactly. And how does the RAS know what is important?
Oh, it looks at the programming.
It looks at the blueprint you carved into the stone of your unconscious during those 4 minutes before sleep. If you program the unconscious with the feeling of failure and lack, your RAS acts as a filter that actively hides opportunities from your conscious awareness.
Wow.
You literally become blind to the wave of possibilities around you.
Wow.
But if you change the observation in that 4-minute window, if you program your unconscious with the reality of your desire fulfilled, your RAS completely recalibrates.
So it's not that the universe magically bends to my will. It's that my brain suddenly allows me to perceive the pathways, the conversations, the opportunities that were always there.
Yes.
But my previous anxiety filter was just blocking them out. So the physical material world I experience tomorrow is just the lagging result of the filter I programmed tonight.
That is the precise mechanism. You are operating in the realm of psychological potential, which ultimately dictates your behavioral reality.
Okay, that makes so much more sense to me. So if this 4-minute window is essentially the control room of reality, how exactly do we step into it intentionally? Because we clearly can't just forcefully think about our goals while staring at the ceiling and stressing out.
No. Brute mental force is the language of the waking ego. To use the hypnagogic state properly, we have to use the core technique synthesized from Jung's work. And it begins with what we call retreat and disconnection. You have to find complete physical and mental silence.
Which honestly, in today's world, is basically an act of rebellion.
It truly is. You must find a place where no notification, no external demand can reach you. You sit or lie down, take several deliberate, really slow breaths, and actively release the accumulated physical weight of the day.
Like physically unclenching.
Yes. You have to let the relentless forward movement of time just dissolve. You cannot plant a new delicate seed in soil that is choked with the tight, anxious roots of daily stress. You have to create a void first.
And once you are in that quiet, hazy threshold between wakefulness and sleep, you ask yourself what Jung considered to be this profoundly transformative question. You ask your body, if my desire were already fulfilled right now in this exact moment, what would I feel?
And the wording there is so deliberate. It's not what will I feel one day in the future, it's what would I feel right now.
Right.
If the debt was cleared today, if the health diagnosis came back totally clean today.
And you don't let your logical mind answer with a sentence. You let your body answer with a physical sensation. You find that feeling and you hold that specific bodily sensation for 3 full minutes. You just stay inside it. You repeat inwardly with gentle conviction, this has already happened. This is already mine.
And then you conclude that 4-minute window with a simple, silent thank you.
Okay, but I have to play devil's advocate here.
Go for it.
Let's say someone is listening to this and they are currently facing crushing debt. The idea of feeling gratitude for a bank account that they know is empty, it feels like cognitive dissonance. It feels like you're just lying to yourself. Doesn't the brain just reject that?
It feels like a lie to the conscious, analytical brain, the IT admin. Remember,
IT admin is offline.
exactly. The shift to gratitude is actually a masterstroke of psychological alchemy because of how the unconscious processes time. When you are desperately wanting something, your emotional energy is rooted in lack. You are constantly broadcasting, I do not have this.
Right.
And the unconscious accepts that state of lack and builds tomorrow around it. But gratitude, you cannot feel genuine physiological gratitude for something unless you have already received it.
So by forcing the sensation of gratitude, you are essentially tricking the brain's predictive processing model.
Yes, the brain hates a mismatch between its internal state and its external reality. If you encode deep, embodied gratitude into the unconscious, the brain wakes up the next day and says, wait a minute, my foundational programming says we are secure and grateful, but my external environment doesn't match.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah, it says I need to alter my behavior, my focus, and my decisions to bridge this gap. It turns you into a heat-seeking missile for the reality that matches your internal state.
That makes the next point in the sources so crucial because it addresses the fatal mistake people make when they try this visualization. And I'll admit, I've tried this before, and I used to do it completely wrong. You absolutely cannot visualize from the third person.
This is a subtle but massive point of failure for so many people. If your desire is to live in a beautiful new home, and you lie in bed and visualize yourself standing on the balcony of that home, but you are watching yourself from the outside, like you're watching a character on a movie screen, you have completely detached yourself from the experience.
Right, it's like you're the director of the movie and not the actor living the scene. You're basically saying, hey, look at that guy over there. He looks so happy on that balcony.
Exactly. Your brain's mirror neuron system might register a bit of empathy, but it categorizes the event as happening to someone else. To do this correctly, to actually encode it as your own reality, you must inhabit the scene from the first-person perspective. You have to look out through your own eyes.
So it's not just seeing a picture.
No, it requires embodied cognition. You aren't just seeing an image. You are feeling the rough texture of the brick on that balcony under your own hands. You have to feel the specific warmth of the sun on your face, the gravity of your feet on the floorboards, the specific aggressive relief in your own chest.
Wow.
Jung maintained that the unconscious does not give you what you logically ask for. It reflects your inner state of being. If you watch yourself from a distance, your core state is still one of separation.
That makes perfect sense. Let me push back on the modern internet interpretation of this too, because you see all these influencers talking about vibrating high.
Oh, yes.
They make it seem like you have to force yourself into a state of ecstatic, manic joy all the time to make your desires come true. But trying to vibrate high just feels like riding a temporary sugar rush of emotion. If I try to force ecstatic joy every night, I'm going to be exhausted. The crash is inevitable.
I completely agree, and that is a really dangerous misinterpretation of the psychology. Emotions are inherently unstable. They are literally designed to fluctuate based on external stimuli. If you rely on vibrating high, your practice will be chaotic. What Jung's depth psychology points to isn't vibrating high, it's vibrating strong.
Vibrating strong. Okay, explain the difference there.
Strong vibration is not a heightened emotion. It is sensory certainty. It is multidimensional coherence.
It's like knowing you are sitting in a chair right now. You don't have to pump yourself up and scream, I'm so excited to be sitting in this chair. I believe in the chair.
No, of course not.
You just sit in it. It's a quiet, unremarkable, unshakable knowing.
Exactly. Coherence means your physical body, your mental focus, and your spiritual intention are all aligned at the exact same frequency. If your mind is visualizing wealth, but your body is tense with the physical posture of anxiety, your jaw is clenched, your breathing is shallow, you lack coherence.
Signals are getting crossed.
Yes,
Yeah.
you are sending a canceled out, noisy signal to the unconscious. Vibrating strong is physically, at a cellular level, embodying the quiet, relaxed physiological state of already having the outcome.
Okay, but let's be deeply practical here. For a lot of people listening right now, the idea of visualizing a highly specific, multisensory scenario like feeling the texture of a brick wall they've never actually touched or smelling the air of a city they don't live in, it can feel incredibly difficult. It can feel forced.
It can.
The IT admin of the mind keeps trying to boot back up and say, you're making this up. So what if the visual imagery just isn't clicking for someone?
Jung and the ancient mystics understood this difficulty perfectly. Not everyone is highly visual. Fortunately, there is a verbal backdoor into the unconscious. If the imagery is too difficult to construct, you can use the specific vocabulary of the unconscious mind.
Because the unconscious does not respond to waking willpower. If you lie in the dark and dictate commands like, I will be more productive tomorrow, I will not eat junk food, I will be confident, the unconscious basically just hears white noise.
Right. Willpower is a function of the prefrontal cortex, which, as we established, is powering down. The unconscious limbic system responds to symbols and to present continuous states.
Present continuous.
Yes. It responds to gentle invitations, never forceful commands. Our sources outline 7 specific phrases designed to bypass the critical mind during those 4 minutes. Let's look at how they function, because they are essentially psychological antidotes.
Yeah, let's contextualize this. Because I want you listening to imagine being profoundly burnt out. Say you are exhausted by the relentless demands of your career, you feel like you are falling behind, and every night you go to sleep carrying the heavy expectations of your family and society. What is the vocabulary you should use in the dark?
For that person, the first invitation to the unconscious might be, I am becoming the person I've always quietly known I could be.
Notice the phrasing there. I am becoming, not I will be.
The linguistic psychology of the present continuous tense is vital. When you say I will be, you create a permanent gap. The unconscious registers the goal as always existing in the future. It's always not yet.
It pushes it away.
Exactly. But I am becoming conjures an image of transformation currently in motion. It honors the journey and immediately triggers a question in the deep mind. What does the person who is currently becoming do tomorrow morning?
It sets the trajectory. And for the exhaustion, there is a phrase that I think is the most confronting one in the entire stack. It's this: I am allowed to rest without earning it.
It is confronting, because our modern psyche is practically engineered to reject it. We have completely detached our intrinsic worth as human beings and attached it entirely to our economic productivity.
Oh, 100%.
We view rest as a reward that is only granted after we have destroyed ourselves with work.
I feel that in my bones. I mean, the idea of resting just because I exist feels almost, I don't know, irresponsible. But if we don't grant ourselves that permission, this whole 4-minute technique just falls apart, doesn't it?
Completely.
Ah.
Because rest is not a reward. It is the biological necessity where psychological integration happens. If you are constantly producing, your psyche never has the bandwidth to digest and organize the new programming you're trying to install. This phrase is a radical act of uncoupling your worth from your output.
And what about all that baggage from other people, the familial expectations, the cultural pressure?
That is where the phrase, I release what does not belong to me, becomes a really profound tool. We carry massive bags of psychological rocks handed to us by parents, former partners, bosses.
Saying this in the hypnagogic state gives the unconscious explicit permission to categorize those external pressures as foreign objects and to literally set them down while you sleep.
So it's subtraction, not addition. Which ties into another incredible phrase from the sources. Tomorrow I will meet the day as someone who is already healing. I love this because so much of the self-improvement world tells us we have to be totally healed or fixed before we can be successful or find a relationship.
Which is an impossible standard.
Right.
Healing is a direction, not a destination. This phrase acknowledges the wound, but commits to the forward movement. It bypasses the ego's demand for perfection.
We also have, I trust what is unfolding even when I cannot see it yet. This feels like a direct counterattack against anxiety.
It relies on what Jung called the self, capital S, the accumulated deeper intelligence within you that operates below conscious awareness. Anxiety is the ego's desperate attempt to control every single variable.
Which is exhausting.
It is. This phrase transfers the burden of control from the exhausted ego to the deeper, highly capable unconscious. There are two more phrases that really set the stage for the deeper work we need to discuss. I am exactly where I need to be, which just ends the exhausting war with reality. You can't navigate to a new destination if you are lying about your current coordinates.
Absolutely.
And finally, I am willing to see what I have been avoiding.
Notice it says, I am willing. It doesn't say, show me all my repressed trauma right this second.
Right, that would be
It
overwhelming.
just cracks the door open. It signals a readiness for integration without flooding your nervous system.
So you do this work. You lie in the dark, you bypass the IT admin, you use the 4 minutes to visualize in the first person, or you use these phrases to plant a delicate new seed in the unconscious. You do it perfectly.
Okay.
But here is the kicker. Your daytime behavior dictates whether that seed actually takes root or if it dies immediately. And the sources are incredibly clear on this. The fastest, most efficient way to kill your desire is by opening your mouth.
We're entering the territory of the hermetic vessel. Now, this is an ancient concept from alchemical philosophy, but it maps perfectly onto modern behavioral neuroscience. The psychological necessity of silence cannot be overstated. You must never share your deep desires or unformed goals with others before they have fully crystallized into physical reality.
The alchemy metaphor is so brilliant here. In alchemical texts, if you want to transform base lead into gold, it requires a hermetic vessel, a completely, perfectly sealed container. The heat and pressure have to build up inside.
Yes.
If you constantly pop the lid off to show everyone how the transformation is going, the heat escapes, the pressure drops, and you are left with nothing but warm lead. The gold never forms.
And neuroscience completely validates this alchemical law. Let's look at the dopaminergic reward pathway in the brain.
Okay, let's do it.
When you set a significant goal, let's say you decide to write a book or start a business or radically change your health, and you immediately go tell your friends about it, what happens?
Oh, they congratulate you. They say, wow, that's amazing. You're going to do great. And you feel this massive surge of pride.
That surge is dopamine. But here is the fatal flaw in our neurochemistry. The primitive parts of the brain cannot distinguish between the dopamine released by talking about an achievement and the dopamine released by actually doing the grueling work required to achieve it.
Wait, oh, wow. So you get the chemical reward prematurely.
Precisely. The brain registers the social validation and assumes, task accomplished, reward secured. And because you have already received the neurochemical payoff, your motivation to actually wake up the next morning and do the unglamorous grinding work just plummets.
You short-circuited the cycle.
You short-circuited the motivation cycle. The heat escaped the vessel.
I have absolutely done this. You get that rush of telling everyone your grand plan at a dinner party, and the next day the drive is just totally evaporated.
Exactly.
But it's not just about sabotaging your own dopamine, is it? The sources talk about the concept of the evil eye, and not in a superstitious way, but as a very real psychological contagion.
Exposing your fragile seed of a dream to someone else risks crashing it directly into the wall of their unhealed limitations. This is the psychological reality of the evil eye. It isn't a magical curse. It is the projection of another person's shadow onto your ambition.
Give me an example of how that works. Like, if I tell a deeply cynical friend about my idea to start a company and they have secretly given up on their own ambitions.
Their response isn't going to be neutral.
Right.
No. Their unhealed wounds regarding their own perceived failures will inevitably seep into your narrative. They will offer, realistic advice that is actually just their own masked fear. And because humans are highly empathetic creatures with active mirror neurons, you will inevitably absorb their doubt. You invite their limitations into your hermetic vessel, and you begin to doubt yourself.
It's like pulling a newly planted seed out of the dirt every single day to show your neighbors and asking, hey, does this look like it's growing? You don't prove the seed is healthy by exposing it to the air and the judgment of others. You prove you trust it by leaving it in the dark soil.
There is an ancient maxim. The one who knows does not speak. The one who speaks does not know. You have to protect your intention with fierce, sacred care. You build the energy internally.
Okay, let's look at the troubleshooting phase, because this is where people give up. Let's say you are doing everything right.
Okay.
You use the 4 minutes of theta waves. You visualize in the first person with embodied cognition. You keep your mouth completely shut and maintain the hermetic seal. But a month goes by, and your life is still a chaotic mess. Nothing is shifting. What broke the machine?
If the technique is failing, despite your conscious effort, it means there is a saboteur in the basement. Your conscious desires are being overridden by a massive, self-destructive counter-program running in the deep unconscious.
And this brings us to the absolute cornerstone of Jungian psychology, the shadow.
Yes, the shadow.
Jung famously said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. We need to really unpack what the shadow is because it sounds like a spooky ghost story, but it's actually incredibly practical.
To understand the shadow, we first have to understand its opposite, the persona. The persona is the social mask you have actively constructed over your entire lifetime. It is the version of yourself you built to survive, to fit in, to be loved by your parents, and to be praised by society.
So from a very young age, you learn that being polite, quiet, and agreeable earns you rewards. So agreeable gets glued onto your persona mask. But what happens to the anger? What happens to the envy, the selfishness, the fear, the loud, chaotic, messy parts of your humanity?
Well, society tells us those traits are unacceptable. So
Yeah.
we take all of that raw emotional material and we stuff it into a heavy psychological bag and we drag it behind us in the dark. That bag is the shadow. It is the sum of all your repressed elements.
But the key point here is that the shadow isn't inherently evil, right? We tend to think of it as a demon, but it actually contains vital energy.
Absolutely. We don't just repress negative traits. We often repress the incredibly positive ones. Assertiveness, fierce boundary setting, deep creativity, even the capacity for intense joy.
Really? Joy.
Yes. If you were raised in an environment that didn't tolerate those things or told you to quiet down, they got shoved into the shadow too.
And when you repress this massive amount of energy, it doesn't just sit quietly in the dark bag.
No. The psyche demands equilibrium.
Mhm.
If you repress the energy, it begins to act autonomously. It leaks out. This is why you experience chronic, unexplainable anxiety. It's why you have explosive outbursts of disproportionate anger over trivial things.
Or self-sabotage.
Exactly, which is most relevant to our discussion. It's why you experience crippling self-sabotage right as you are about to achieve the desire you've been manifesting. The shadow pulls the plug because it doesn't feel safe with the new reality.
It's like a neglected kid throwing a massive tantrum in the basement and knocking out the power to the whole house just because you won't pay attention to them.
That's a perfect analogy.
So the obvious question is, if the shadow is unconscious, how do we spot it? How do we know what's in the bag?
The primary diagnostic tool for identifying your shadow is the mechanism of projection. Projection is the shadow's signature move. Because acknowledging your own repressed flaws creates way too much cognitive dissonance, your ego protects you by projecting those flaws onto other people.
Okay, give me an example of how this plays out in daily life.
When you feel a sudden, visceral, highly disproportionate hatred or irritation for someone over a relatively minor trait, you're almost certainly projecting. Let's say you have a colleague who is a bit boastful about their accomplishments.
Okay.
If you notice it and think, oh, they're a bit annoying, that's normal observation. But if you are obsessively infuriated by them, if you go home and vent to your partner for an hour about how arrogant they are, you are projecting.
So what I am condemning in them is actually a repressed aspect of myself.
Precisely. In that scenario, your intense rage indicates that you have completely repressed your own natural desire for recognition, your own ambition, and your own healthy pride. The shadow is screaming at you, look at them. They are allowed to take up space and be proud, and you won't let us do that.
Wow. That is confronting. Okay, so I spot my shadow. I realize through projection that I have this massive well of repressed anger or envy. What is the practical application here? I can't just unleash my repressed rage at a grocery store cashier in the name of shadow integration. How do we dialogue with this safely?
Shadow integration involves a very deliberate process of moving through denial, resistance, acceptance, and finally integration. One of the most effective tools the sources recommend is reflective writing, but doing it from a state of emotional separation. When you feel that disproportionate anger spike, you sit down and you literally dialogue with it on the page.
You treat the emotion as an internal messenger rather than identifying with it.
Yes. You ask the anger, what are you trying to protect me from right now? You establish a boundary. You are not the anger. You are the vast house of consciousness, and the anger is simply a frantic visitor knocking on the front door. You invite it into the living room, you listen to its message, but you do not let it drive the car.
The sources also mention that as you begin this integration work, you'll start encountering deeper structural patterns in your psyche, what Jung called the archetypes.
The archetypes are the foundational blueprints of human experience, shared across all cultures. As you empty the bag of the shadow, you will often encounter them in your dreams. The anima and animus, for example, represent the unconscious feminine and masculine aspects within us, often appearing as guides or challengers.
The one that always fascinates me is the trickster.
The trickster is the archetype of chaos and rule breaking. It's incredibly important because it often shows up right when your ego starts feeling arrogant.
Oh, I felt that.
It's just when you think, I have mastered my shadow, I am highly evolved. The trickster orchestrates a humiliating mistake or a sudden lapse in judgment to puncture your inflated ego and keep you grounded.
And as you clear out these weeds, as you stop spending 80% of your daily psychological energy just keeping the closet door of the shadow shut, something amazing happens. You suddenly have all this free available energy. And you realize that the ultimate goal of the 4-minute technique wasn't just to get a promotion at work or manifest a nicer apartment. Those were just starter goals.
The real goal, the end game of Jungian psychology, is individuation. It is awakening to who you truly are and uncovering the unique, hidden spiritual gifts you possess beneath the persona.
Which brings us to the profound practice of active imagination. Jung considered this one of his most vital discoveries. How does active imagination differ from the 4-minute visualization we talked about earlier?
It is fundamentally different in its intention and its direction. In the 4-minute visualization, you are engaged in directed thought. You have a specific goal, a new house, a healed body, and you're actively programming the unconscious to move toward it. Active imagination, on the other hand, is receptive. You enter that same liminal meditative state, but you do it completely devoid of any conscious goal or program.
You aren't trying to force an image.
Exactly. You step back and allow the deep unconscious to speak to you autonomously through symbols. You might close your eyes and visualize a locked door, and instead of forcing it open in your mind, you just wait to see what walks through it. You're essentially observing the dream while remaining fully awake.
And as you practice this, the sources say your specific hidden spiritual gift will begin to awaken. Now, I want to challenge this because we just made a massive leap from fixing our daily anxiety to unlocking spiritual gifts. Is there a danger here of someone just developing delusions of grandeur because they did some journaling? How is this grounded in reality?
It is a fair challenge, and we must be precise. These gifts aren't supernatural superpowers. They are highly attuned psychological states that become available when the static of the shadow is removed. When the noise of anxiety and repression is gone, the brain's natural capacities can function at an extraordinary level.
Let's break down the 4 archetypal gifts the sources mention so we can see how they manifest practically.
The first is the prophet, which is driven by an intense, highly developed intuition. This isn't crystal ball gazing. This is a person whose unconscious pattern recognition is so fast and so accurate that it bypasses logical thought. They just know things before there is evidence.
Like a gut feeling on steroids.
Yes. They might suddenly change their route to work for no logical reason and avoid a massive accident because their unconscious registered subtle environmental cues that their conscious mind missed.
They're in direct contact with the deep data stream.
Exactly.
And the second gift is the healer, driven by profound empathy.
The healer has a highly sensitive mirror neuron system. They don't just listen to someone's pain, they physically inhabit it. They absorb the emotional weight of a room the moment they walk in. This is the person to whom strangers naturally confess their deepest, darkest secrets on an airplane or at a bus stop because their physiology broadcasts absolute safety.
That sounds beautiful, but also exhausting if you don't have boundaries.
Which is why shadow work has to come first.
Right. And the third is the dreamer. For these individuals, the theater of sleep is not just random neural noise. Their dreams possess distinct architecture, recurring symbolic language, and often a prophetic quality that directly guides their waking decisions.
And the fourth is the wise one, characterized by depth. This is the person who receives clear, interior transmissions of wisdom. In the middle of a crisis, when everyone else's beta waves are frantic, the wise one receives a single sentence, or even just a word, that arrives with absolute clarity and solves the problem instantly.
To truly understand the magnitude of what this awakened state looks like, we have to look at Jung's clinical observations of the dying. The sources detail how, for decades, he studied the dreams and psychological states of terminally ill patients.
It is some of his most profound work. He observed that as physical death approached, the ego essentially gave up. The desperate need to maintain the social persona vanished entirely. And in the absence of that ego, the deep, ancient center of the psyche, the self, emerged.
And the dreams of these patients completely transformed. They stopped dreaming about their daily worries, their unpaid bills, or their physical pain. They started dreaming about massive archetypal journeys, rivers, bridges, crossing thresholds, and eventually symbols of absolute wholeness, like geometric mandalas in radiant light. They weren't experiencing the terror of annihilation, they were experiencing a homecoming.
But Jung's most unsettling and revolutionary realization was this. This profound awakening, this emergence of the self, does not require impending death. When he studied completely healthy individuals who were engaging deeply with their unconscious through active imagination and shadow work, they produced the exact same symbols. They experienced the exact same dissolution of the anxious ego.
The self doesn't wait for the end of your life to reveal itself. It is waiting just on the other side of that 4-minute door every single night. It's the realization that consciousness is not produced by the body. You are consciousness, temporarily expressed through a biological body.
But navigating this awakened state and utilizing these gifts requires immense discernment, because the ego is incredibly tricky. How do you distinguish the true voice of the soul, your intuition, your genuine gift, from the loud, chaotic noise of your anxious mind pretending to be intuition?
The sources give a brilliant physical litmus test for this. You don't ask your mind, you ask your body.
Yes.
True intuition deeply relaxes the body. It brings a profound sense of clarity, a quiet dropping in, a feeling of, of course. Anxiety, on the other hand, contracts the body. It tightens the jaw, raises the shoulders, and brings confusion and a frantic, desperate need to figure everything out immediately. The body always knows the difference before the mind does.
Which brings us to a beautiful paradox in all of this.
Yeah.
If we connect everything we've discussed back to the very beginning.
Right. We started this whole deep dive talking about how to use the 4 minutes before sleep to fulfill our earthly desires, how to program the reticular activating system to get the job, find the relationship, fix the bank account.
But as you actually do this work, as you use the hypnagogic state, as you brave the confrontation with your shadow, and as you awaken your innate gifts, your desires naturally begin to evolve. You realize that you are deeply connected to a massive collective unconscious. You stop desperately clawing at the universe for small ego-driven things because the illusion of separation fades.
And when that happens, you enter a state of synchronicity. Meaningful coincidences become the norm. When you align your internal programming with your true self, the external universe seemingly reorganizes itself to support that alignment. The friction of the beta wave life disappears, and you find yourself in the right place at the right time, effortlessly.
You no longer force reality. You flow with it.
Okay, let's look at the map of the journey we just took because we covered massive ground today. You, listening to this, you have the exact tools now. The physical door in your mind is waiting for you tonight. You understand the biology of the 4-minute window, the hypnagogic state, where the IT admin of your ego finally logs off.
You do?
You know the vital difference between exhausting yourself by trying to vibrate high and grounding yourself by vibrating strong with multidimensional embodied certainty.
You are equipped with the vocabulary of the unconscious, those gentle invitations to become, to heal, and to rest without earning it. You understand the neuroscience behind the hermetic seal and why you must protect your fragile, growing seed in absolute silence to prevent the premature spike of dopamine and the contagion of the evil eye.
You know that the saboteur ruining your plans is just your shadow, throwing a tantrum in the basement, and you know how to dialogue with it. And most importantly, you know that beneath all of that noise, a unique spiritual gift, profound intuition, empathy, dreaming, or deep wisdom is waiting for you to stop calling it a burden and start using it as your compass.
As we conclude our exploration today, I want to leave you with one final story from the sources, a final thought to sit with. Carl Jung once had a profoundly unsettling dream. In this dream, he was walking down a dusty dirt road and came upon a small, isolated chapel. He went inside, expecting to see an altar. But the room was empty, except for a yogi sitting on the floor in a state of deep, profound meditation.
Wow.
As Jung walked closer to examine the yogi, he realized with a shock that the yogi had his own face. Jung realized within the logic of the dream that the yogi was in a state of active imagination and that the yogi was actively imagining him. Jung, the waking professor, the man with a busy career, a family, and a life, was merely the dream of that greater, deeper inner figure. If that yogi woke up, Jung's entire waking reality would cease to exist.
That completely inverts our understanding of who is in control.
It does. It shatters the ego entirely. And it raises an ultimate question for you to consider tonight. When you lie down in the dark, when the house is quiet and the beta waves slow down, and you step into those 4 minutes as the door opens, ask yourself, are you simply a person using those 4 minutes to dream up your perfect life? Or is the deepest, truest, ancient version of yourself finally using those 4 minutes to dream you into reality.
Step into the dark tonight and begin.